here, and I'm back after a short break from the channel. Part of the reason for having a bit of a break from doing any games was I bought myself Fallout 4 and spent about the last week and a half playing that fairly non-stop in my gaming time, and didn't really want to record a series on it. And secondly, I couldn't really do any more Kerbal Space videos because now we're up to KSP 1.12, and I just wanted to wait for all the mods to be updated through CCAN. Now, most of the mods have now been updated, so it's they're hopefully all working again. If we have any funny bugs during this video or it crashes, I'm sure we'll know about it. But as you might remember from last time, we left off where we'd completed launching some of the German rockets, the A3 and the V2. As you can see, we completed escaping the atmosphere, scientific data, launching our first vessel, the A3 rocket and the V2 rocket. So we've essentially moved through World War II. We've got some active contracts currently. Apparently we've got an active tour contract. That's strange. That's from a mod, and I'm just going to cancel that, even though it costs me some stuff. Anyway, so now in this episode we're going to be starting with some of the Russian rockets. So this is the R1V. This was a Russian variant, or should I say a Soviet variant of the V2, which left the atmosphere and returned using the capsules in there, started taking things up into space. So we're going to be launching the R1V and hopefully using heat shields and parachutes, returning it to the Earth. So I think we'll go ahead and accept that contract. Now we also have other contracts available. One is to build a communications network for Kerbin, with 3 satellites. This is from the mod Remote Tech, which requires you to have signal connections. Now I think we're going to accept the 3 satellite version to start with. We could go for the 4 satellite one, but I like having 3 satellites to start with to try and get this completed. So we'll also accept that one. And let's just see if we can get any more of the historical contracts. It doesn't look like we can, so I think we're going to just go and build an R1V rocket. Now, for this build, I'm just going to take the V2 that we used last time and modify it so we've got something which will allow it to return from a suborbital spaceflight. It doesn't have to get anywhere near orbit, so we don't need to worry about that too much. So let's load up our V2 rocket. This is the bit that we actually want to return, so thanks to some of the signs we got last time, we can start to put useful things on here, like a procedural heat shield. Which for some reason I can't tweak down. Do we have any other heat shields? We don't. Well, I guess it's procedural heat shield down to 1 meter in diameter then. We'll lower the fairing down. So that's on there. We're going to want a decoupler to live underneath there. Scaled to the right side. I know it looks a bit wonky. Ooh, whoops. It definitely looks a bit janky, but that shouldn't be too much of an issue. Kerbal Engineer. Oh, I know why. There we are. Okay. This is our V2. And on here, we're going to get rid of the seismic accelerometer. I want to enable fuel crossfeed, and I can't. So yep, so this thing now doesn't actually have any fuel in it. So for that, I think we're going to pop a stack separator in here. I just want to keep that in there as a nose cone. I am going to pop a parachute in here if I can. Can I put that on top of that? I can't. Maybe that parachute doesn't go on then. It's a bit too big. That return parachute I want to enable when that goes off. Now in theory, this thing has a decoupler involved. Oh, I see. Okay, that makes sense. So in theory, when that goes, that will also activate, which will allow us to do interesting stuff. So there we are. We've still got enough delta V to get ourselves up into suborbital flight like we did last time, provided this thing flies straight. We've got everything on there. We've got parachute, we've got a heat shield so we can return it. I probably don't actually need a heat shield, but we'll go with one anyway. Can we see if we can put some actual interesting science equipment on here? I think we're, in the spirit of taking a mammal into space, or taking something into space, I think we're going to try and put one of these Mystery U containment units on here. Toggle info. Okay. So, with that in mind, we'll just name this the R... Is it the R1V? I think it's the R1V. Yeah. The R1V. So here we go. Now, this was a very interesting time in the space race because you've got the Soviets and the United States competing with each other to try and get things up there, satellites and all the rest of it, but partly for science, but also because they want to drop megatons of nuclear weapons on each other. But, you know, war is, I guess, what drives science forward. So, here we go. And we're away. We're going to follow a fairly similar launch profile to that which we did for the V2 we launched in the first episode, where we're just going to take this thing up to about 200 meters per second and then start hopefully tilting the thing over into its gravity turn and just keep pointing it upwards and keep the thing going. Now hopefully everything's going to work decoupler wise. I just want to double check. If I go into toggle info, I can't... Oh, I can set it for altitude. Okay, pre-deployment at about 10,000 meters and it's full deployment at about 1,000. There we are. So we're up to our 200 meters per second. We've got a good thrust to weight ratio. We're working through fuel fairly effectively. I think at this point we're just going to start tilting it over ever so slightly and ever so gently. Just the tiniest amount of tilt, just so we start to get that, the beginnings of the parabolic trajectory that we want. So as you see, we're going up and it's starting to stretch itself along so it'll land in the ocean. Now you want to be landing in the ocean because it's slightly softer than the land, and I don't know how well this parachute's actually going to perform. Now I think we're actually going to put this up to full throttle so that we can try and escape the atmosphere a little bit quicker. We're coming up to about 10,000 meters, and so we'll start to tip it over ever so slightly more gently. Got to be very gentle so we don't get aerodynamic forces that flip the thing over, which I'm sure would be hilarious. But it's a waste of a rocket. And for those of you new to Kerbal Space Program, I definitely recommend trying out this sort of method, starting with the simplest rockets that were developed early in the annals of human attempts to get to space. Ooh, I wonder if that's not great. Maybe we're not going to space. Have I completely underestimated this? I think I have. Crap. Well, this thing isn't going to space. Let's get some scientific data. We get 9 science van at least, so this definitely isn't going to space. So let's start by decoupling some things. We'll also decouple that. Woo! That was not entirely what I was expecting. Let's just slide off that. Leave that behind. And I think we'll arm the parachute. Because we can at least collect the science data. We've done all of this, haven't we? Yes, we have. The parachute's now armed, however, so I think we'll just have to watch and follow this thing go over. I think we're going to have to put some slightly more delta V on this. Or at least get a longer burn time, because that thing didn't quite get to space. And I think it's because of that heat shield, which doesn't allow for fuel transfer. Because we were really pushing it on the Delta V budget, so... But at least when this thing does return, we're going to hopefully have it... there goes the rest of the V2. Hopefully this thing will actually pre-deploy properly. There goes the parachute. Yep, we should be pretty safe with this thing. So like I was saying, it's a really interesting period in human spaceflight history. And for those of you new to Kerbal Space Program, I definitely recommend getting some of the contract packs as mods. Even if you don't play with many other mods, get the contract packs and try and follow through historical spaceflight missions. Rather than just going, I want to go to the moon straight away, which probably isn't the most exciting advice. Start by doing these things that were very, very hard in the 1930s and 40s to get a basic understanding of how you get to space, how you design a rocket with enough power to get itself to space and push through the lower atmosphere, what sort of thrust-to-weight ratios you want to put and how to balance that. Because as soon as you try and start going for the bigger missions, you need to have a really good understanding of how to engineer the craft to get where you want them to get to. For instance, the moon, if you don't put enough delta V in the top few stages, you're either not going to be able to return from the moon, or you're going to slam into the surface because of either lack of thrust-to-weight ratio, or lack of burn time, or lack of delta V. Yeah, it's about planning it and trying to get those manoeuvres done. And there are some fairly foolproof ways to get to orbit, but you need to understand the fundamentals of how you get there with small rockets. You can start trying to apply those techniques to big rockets and experimenting and finding out what things don't work, why they're not working as best as you can, and taking that knowledge and applying it to your design so you expand them. So I'd say start in sandbox mode or career mode with the contract packs enabled, but give yourself loads of money and, you know, crews respawn and that sort of thing, and just have a go at trying to get these initial missions, the V2s, the R1Vs, the Explorers, up into their orbits. And some of these contracts will actually ask you to essentially fail, because not all historical space missions succeeded, and especially in the Explorers, I think there's a few that don't get out of suborbital trajectories because things went wrong with the rockets. And you can see where they were failing or why they might have failed, experience that and use that as well as part of the contracts to advance your career, to understand where things are going to go wrong in rocket launch patterns. Even if your rocket that you've designed it is completely capable of just going wherever you want it to, however you want it to, it's not really an issue. There we go. And since we've actually landed one for the first time... Oh, we've got no connection, of course we don't. But we have completed... we've completed the R1V because we met enough of the things. Now, we didn't go to space, which is a bit disappointing. But we have at least launched a suborbital trajectory, which we've then recovered. And it went to the edge of space at 52,000 metres, so that's pretty good. And splash into the ocean. So we'll slow time down and recover the vessel. So that's our successful R1V launch. Hopefully it's going to give us some more of the historical contracts. Otherwise we can start trying to design some very basic satellites. And I can perhaps show you guys how to get into a basic orbit. So we've got some nice science from this. It's not enough to get us up the tree anymore, but we've recovered some funds as well. 34 science isn't enough. All of these take 45. And I think this is where we start to get things like solar panels and actually interesting equipment. So, yeah. Okay. What contracts are available for us? Pointing a dish out from Kerman. I think we'll accept that just as something to do. Is it going to give me any more of these historic missions? Now, I'm not good at planes. I will tell you that. Here we are. So this is the V2 number 20, which was the Russian one. Not the Russian one, sorry. This is an American version of the V2. And this one does go into space. It needs to go past it. And we need to eject the capsule and return the fruit flies, i.e. mystery goo. So let's have a crack at the V2 number 20 for the US Navy. See if we can get it to go a bit better than the R1V. And we're going to change that by editing the design that we used for the R1V. Because that top capsule essentially simulates, as best as I can, the actual capsules that were going on these things and being sent to space. So we need to get a bit more fuel and a bit more burn time in here. And the simplest way of doing that is just to extend our V2. So we'll just whack another one of these in here. And this one is going to be V2 number 20. Yep. Or Blossom 1. In fact, yeah. Let's go with Blossom 1 for its name. So as you can see, our thrust-to-weight ratio has gone down, but we've got more delta V and a longer burn time, and that's what's going to get us up into space. So hopefully by doing this, we're going to have a slightly more successful mission. We've got the parachutes, we've got the heat shields, we've got the antennas, we've got everything to get us into space, keep communications up long enough to get the science, and then return us safely. So without further ado, let's give the Blossom 1 a nice launch. I hope this is a series you guys are enjoying. I hope you're seeing me work through these early missions. Things are going to get more exciting as we get up to satellites that can communicate with the Earth, with each other, and start actually achieving missions. Now again, we're going to follow the fairly standard V2 launch pattern that we did last time. I kind of want to get the mystery goo from here, because that gives us another 7 science. But also we get a lot more returning it from space, so I think we'll do that. And then when we launch something later on, we can do some more of this. So as you can see, we've got much less thrust to weight now. We're only on a 1.2 thrust to weight ratio, but we've got a 2-minute burn time, more delta V, and once this thing... oh goody. Once this thing starts getting through this very thick atmosphere down here and up to about 10 kilometres, we're going to really see a boost in speed. We're going to let this thing just go at full throttle all the way. We want to get it to space, we want to get that data, we want to get the fruit flies out of the atmosphere and let them explore and enjoy the confines of this weird little capsule that we stuck them in. So toggle info. Now I like to set things, I don't really understand the pressure thing, so I tend to do it by where in the atmosphere I want them to deploy. We know 10,000 metres stops this capsule. We know 1,000 metres stops the capsule as well. We're coming up to Mach 1, we'll be there fairly soon. So if we use Ferrum Aerospace here, this is a nice little one to show you what your flight status is like. So we're about to hit Mach 1. There we go. 300 metres per second or so, something like that. This thing is really starting to climb now, really starting to pick up speed. So we're going to start to tilt it fairly carefully. I'm being a bit vigorous with this one, but if it starts to tilt like that, we know this thing is almost certainly going to get to space. Atmosphere density is just dropping. And already this is looking a bit more promising. We've got a lot more fuel left, we've got a lot more speed. We can start to flick this thing over just a little bit more. Not too much, mind, but just enough that we're still kind of going sideways, but that we've got a slightly shallower descent profile, because we don't want to be coming in too hard. Yep, this is definitely going to space. So we'll just let this thing keep burning. Burn off all the fuel. There we go. And immediately I'm going to disconnect this. That's going to, as well, give us a bit more force. We're coming up to 87,000 metres. 87 kilometres is pretty low. It's very low. You can do orbits around here, but it's pretty dangerous. And we've still got our connection. So once we hit space, we can start to tilt this thing over and prepare the parachute by firing off this nose cap. Now you may wonder why I've kept the nose cap on but kept it out of fuel, and that's simply because with Ferrum Aerospace you need to think about the aerodynamics of your craft as they're carving a path through the sky. This thing wants to look like a bullet. It wants to fly neatly and cleanly. Now we're almost up into space. I'm going to tick out of the atmosphere very soon. And once we do... excellent. So now we are in space. We've collected our science, our mystery goo. Our fruit flies are nice and happy in that capsule there. Close off Ferrum Aerospace now, it's not really necessary. Oh, we can log some temperature. Now as we're returning this capsule from space, I can keep that data on the capsule without transmitting it. I'm going to disable the SAS and set this thing to tilt. I'm going to decouple that off and arm the parachute. And now this thing is pretty much entirely out of my hands. It's going to go through, and actually we do want to do one more thing. And that's going to be turning this on, because we're returning from space now. We want to try and come in on the prograde direction and keep it there. Not the prograde, sorry, the retrograde direction, because now, as you can see, that heat shield's going to be impacting the atmosphere and taking up the shock heating for us. So I think that's our nose cone flying down there. Here we go. Just gently keep it following that retrograde direction. Ooh, that's not ideal. We don't want to be shock heating like that. And that's because I've put this on one side and it's now unbalanced. However, Because it was quite slow, because it wasn't coming back from orbital velocities, I think we're going to be fine. It's slowing down nicely as it hits the thicker atmosphere. And the parachute pre-deployment will happen any moment now. There we go. That's quite harsh. Now, if these were people, that many Gs would be very uncomfortable. I think that's approaching, what's that, 5, 6, 7, 8... 8 to 9 Gs, it's just experiencing that deceleration. But because it's just some fruit flies and a beeping computer, I think we can be happy with that. Oh, and sorry, I remember one of you commented that my chatter mod was too loud, so I think we'll just turn the beeps down ever so slightly. Turn the SSTV down to about 2. You won't hear any SSTV now, because I've now turned this off, so it's only when I transmit the signs that we get that radio frequency. Because I think that's probably one of the more annoying noises that's out there. So let's whack this up to 4 times time acceleration. But I think we can be pretty happy with that. We've launched the Russian, essentially the Russian version of the bottom one, and the American version. The American version we had to make slightly bigger, so we can actually get to space and get the data we wanted. But, all in all, I'd say we've done some pretty good things. We've gone further. We're now in the 1950s. We're now launching very, very basic probes out of the atmosphere. They're going to space. They're collecting data. We're getting research which documents how living things are experiencing vacuums for the first time. And whilst we could do that on Earth using, I guess, a vacuum chamber, space is different. Space is full of radiation and all the rest of it, and just exploding fruit flies in a vacuum chamber wouldn't teach us a huge amount beyond things explode in a vacuum. Or I don't actually know if things do explode in a vacuum. I remember... Do you expand? I can't remember. There's plenty of other people on YouTube better at science than I who can tell you what happens to human bodies and other mammals designed for Earth's gravity and atmospheric pressure in a vacuum. I don't think it's very pleasant either way. I know things start to boil off you. But we don't have to worry about that. We're not sending Kerbal up to space yet, and I don't think we want to for quite a while with the technology levels we've got. And whilst these early missions probably aren't the most exciting, in terms of it's not really boldly going to the moon, these are the missions which laid the foundations and the groundwork for us to go and do those very, very difficult things. And it's because of missions like this that we understand radiation in space and why we'll have to protect people when we do eventually make the journey to Mars. And we understand that more from things like the International Space Station. How do humans react? What do people go crazy in space? Well, it's difficult to say. Those who landed on the moon seem to have done all right, but those who had to orbit around the moon waiting for the lander to rejoin them and potentially abandon their friends to die on the moon if something went wrong, we know they didn't fare too well with that experience, being completely alone in a capsule in space for a few days with the thought that their friends might be about to die. So here we are. We've completed our V2 number 20. It's the Blossom 1. So let's recover Blossom 1's capsule and see what we get. Okay. So we've recovered actually quite a lot of science. 26 science. Now got 65 science. We've recovered a fair amount of parts. Another 7,000 funds back. So we are doing okay on these rockets. The expensive stuff is coming back at least. And if we go to mission control, I don't think we have any more historical contracts we can accept right now. So I think what we're going to do, we'll spend our science and see where we want to go. Now, one of the key things we're going to need if we want to build better satellites and better communications arrays, which is obviously one of our next challenges, out of the historical timeline, but, you know, something to do, is build a communications network. We're going to need these antennas, these bigger things, and we're going to need solar panels and more batteries. And so with that in mind, I think we're going to move for basic science, which include these basic electronics. We've got 20 science left. That's a pretty good budget to start with. Now, mission control. I think some of these contracts aren't... It's a bit silly. I don't really want to do some of these. Anyway, guys, I hope you've enjoyed seeing some further missions and the things we completed. We've launched the R1V, the Soviet version of the V2, which could return its capsule. We've launched the Blossom 1 rocket, the American version, essentially the same thing, using a V2 as a base, which returned capsules with living things going to space. And that's exciting. We're advancing our space program. Because these rockets are so cheap, we have plenty of money, plenty of science, plenty of reputation, and we're advancing up the tree. And I think in the next episode we're going to start building a communications network for Earth so we can all start watching satellite television and having mobile phones and having sat-navs in our cars and those sorts of things. So I hope you guys are enjoying this. I hope you've enjoyed this series so far, and I hope you want to see more of it. If you've got any thoughts, comments or suggestions, please let me know in the comments below the video. If you'd like to see more from the channel, please let me know by subscribing, because that really lets me know you guys are enjoying these videos, or leave a like on the video. I'll continue to make videos, and I hope people just want to see more. So thank you very much to everyone for watching this episode of Kerbal Space Program Historic Progression, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.